It's the Friends Without Benefits podcast. My name is Jason Horton, and I'm here with someone that I haven't officially met in person until right now, although we've communicated and collaborated together. Jamie Loftus. Am I even saying that right?
Yeah, that's totally right.
Oh,
You nailed it.
So far, so
You
good.
nailed it. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you.
It's weird. Sometimes I forget because I feel like I know you because I've spent so much time with your voice and your face.
How annoying is that?
For you.
How annoying is that?
I feel, I mean, I remembered as we were like making physical, I was like, oh yeah, we haven't met, but I feel like I've spent hours with you because I have.
And I felt when I read some of your weird ass jokes that I'm like, holy shit, this is so funny and weird. I wonder what like the in-person's going to be like. And so far, really good.
Thank you.
So we met. So I was looking for an animator, which is something I've been trying to do for a while. And I wanted just to take I went to my Twitter and I was like, well, what tweets did well? So I was like, how can I take one of those tweets and be short enough and make it animated? And I don't really understand the world. And I saw your stuff and I wanted something that was like Dr. Katz, which was a little old school, like adults. Yeah, I love Dr. Katz, like Adult Swim, but not. I didn't want it to be too like weird and gross, where there's like just tons of like vomit and aliens or anything like that.
Right.
Which I know, which is what you want to do, is just like aliens vomiting.
It's great. It's great to do, but also it's like everything in moderation. It's not going to be for every project.
No, but so you did a really great job, and we did a video called Dinosaur Pickup Line.
So much fun.
And how I recorded is I was like, well, I didn't have time to go anywhere, so I was staying at the Encore in Las Vegas, and I brought my blue mic, and I don't know anything about GarageBand, and I probably did that like 60, 70 times. So if I ever tell this as like a joke in like stand up, I was like, if I told it right now, I think I pretty much know it, but I was worried because what was happening is if I said like a P, it would I think it was the letter P would like kind of like pop on.
Popping peas?
Yeah, so it was like that. So I would have to like be like pop. Like I'd say it softly and back up. That's the only way I couldn't get it to not do that. So it took me. And then I was like thinking about thinking about the animation because I didn't want to take too long of a pause, which I might do in person, but on a video would be kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember, but sometimes I'll cut down pauses depending, or sometimes pauses are great and they give me more time to do a weird visual gag that I want to do. So.
And you made me look pretty young. which hey, listen, I appreciate it.
Hey,
next time make me look 9.
Okay, yeah. We'll get progressively younger the more we collaborate until you're just a little baby.
Yeah, until I'm just nothing.
That's a really easy job for me.
Yeah, I'll just be like the inverse. Like I'll just be like imploded in myself.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah.
So, and listen, I don't know if you're like open for business in that sense, but your animation, honestly, you turned it around so quick. I'm not doing any sponsorships, but this is essentially just a sponsorship for your animation and whatever it is you're doing, obviously. But the turnaround was so quick, and I was like, oh, I'm going to look at it, and there's going to be things. I'm going to be like, no. And I was like, this is I can't believe this is like I thought I was looking at somebody else's video.
Whoa, that's so nice.
And I liked it so much, I didn't hate myself in it. That's how masked it was of how good it was. My wife even liked it, and she's the most. I've been doing YouTube for a very, very long time. I've been doing videos for other people for a very long time. And if she doesn't like something, she'll tell me. But if she likes something, she's like, "This is like really good." And it wasn't like too. I've been known to do things that were a little more like nerdy, sexual, and this wasn't that either.
Yeah.
And then you took some liberties. I think was like reading my mind. Like there's one point it was like "you do you" as
yeah.
And I was like, that is so like that's. I didn't write that, but if people are watching it, if they think I did, good for me. I'll take the credit. I'll take the credit.
Take it.
So let's kind of like, that's just how we kind of know each other. But let's go back. Where do you come from?
Where do I come from? I come from Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm from there. I grew up like 45 minutes outside of there.
You sound like me when I talk about New York. I was like, I grew up about 45 minutes outside of New York City. Because that's where you know what I mean? So I understand the 45 minutes outside of...
Well, you have to say it, or otherwise people will start to call you on it, and they'll be like, you didn't grow up in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And it's like,
upstate New York, was that, Buffalo? And I'm like, no, New York's like a pretty...
Buffalo is like 8 hours away. It's so far.
I know.
Yeah. So I grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts. I've got my Brockton, Massachusetts tote bag with me right now.
Did you think I wasn't going to believe you?
Just in case.
Okay.
I like to rep the city wherever I go. The
Yeah.
Shoe City, it was called at one time. Now there's no reason to call it the Shoe
There's no cobblers
City.
there anymore?
No more. It used to be a big old cobble fest. Disgusting, perverted, big old perverted cobble fest. Ooh,
I forgot to offer you this. I forgot to offer you this smart water, and I'm letting everyone know you're not Fiji quality
Listen,
yet.
That's okay.
But right now you're smart water quality.
I honestly, this.
You're not used to this. You're not used to this like fancy shit.
Mm-mm.
You thought you were gonna get maybe like an Arrowhead or like some kind
I
of.
was gonna get one of those midget bottles of Poland Spring, which is what I usually get.
No.
Or whatever the California equivalent of Poland Spring is. I forgot.
That's not how I run things. The FWB.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're from the former shoe city, USA.
I'm from Brockton, and my whole family's from there. Most of them still live there, and then I went to school in Boston, and I lived there all said and done about 5 years before I moved here.
Okay, and how long you been in LA?
2 years next week.
Oh, happy almost anniversary!
Thank you.
So when you were in Boston, outside of Boston, in Boston, what was your jam? Like, what were you doing?
Like when I was in school and stuff?
Yeah, in school, or when you were growing up, like all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, when I was growing up, I was, I was really close with all my cousins. I have 8 cousins, and then there's me and my brother, and my mom, kind of like she ran a daycare out of our house, so it was all 10 of us together all the time.
So it was like it was like Airbnb, like mega before.
It was like poor people Airbnb.
Got it. Yeah.
Where it was like my mom took care of all the kids, and then because no one could afford daycare, and my mom was like, I like them. They're cool. They smell weird. I like them.
Yeah.
And in regards to me and all my cousins, and so she took care of us. My dad was a hockey reporter, still is, and so that was the first thing I wanted to do. Not sports reporting, but just like I wanted to be a reporter when I was little. And I would write a lot, and then my mom ended up being like, I want you to be a dancer, in the way that some mothers want their daughters to be. So I danced for 15 years.
And what kind of, what does that involve?
Well, I did mostly ballet and pointe, but I also did tap and jazz and hip hop, and I did basically.
There's a video of you dancing and running against a train, right?
Yes.
Is that you? Okay, yeah. I remember seeing that and being like, what the hell's going on here? I was like, this looks, but it looks like, I was like, oh, this looks like a thing, but I don't know if it's like, do you know when you're like online and you're like in a comedy community?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at anymore. I ever get to that thing where there's so much stuff. I'm like, what do you, like when I was getting married and I like would post pictures, people assumed I was like doing a video. Or it was like a prank, and I was like,
a bit, yeah.
I was like, no, man. I was like, it's just a real. I never thought I would, and I got married like a lot later in life.
You'd be happy for me.
Yeah, I mean, look at me. No, people just assume like, oh, I didn't know if I should be saying congratulations or this is like a bit or something like that. So I don't know what I'm looking at when you're like dancing against a train.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all it is. Like, and then I've started to do it. I've done it twice now, but now I'm like, oh, I'll just do that every once in a while when I'm near that particular train. And yeah, I mean, I still really I've been trying to figure out ways to incorporate dance into comedy a little more. I did a show it was like a live stream show for Jash a couple months ago that was all ballet and
work with Mickey Meyer?
Swan Lake. No, I didn't know.
Okay, I know Mickey from the Maker. He was the head writer, and I was a writer for Maker
for
a while. Yeah, so I know him. I know that's the only person I know from Jash.
Okay.
Mickey Meyer.
Yeah, I worked with. I mostly worked with their social media team on it
Okay.
because it was like live streamed on Facebook at the
Okay.
time, and it was like a choose your own adventure, which is like I love working in that format. And I did a very truncated Swan Lake, and like got to make the costumes and wear the shoes and do all, and it was just like a great. Oh, I love dance, and I still need to figure out better ways to incorporate it. But anyways, so that was what I did mostly when I was younger. Is I did dance. I played the oboe. I wore a back brace, and I sucked, and that was what I did growing up.
And you're like, I'll show you. And then, or were you like, I'll never show you?
I don't know. I mean, I was like a pretty I guess like a pretty I was an overachiever kid for sure. It was like I was the editor-in-chief of the school paper, and I was
Nerd.
first oboe. Yeah, I was
Nerd.
a nerd.
Nerd.
But it was cool. Like, it wasn't cool. But at my high school was so huge. There were 6,000 kids there. And you were, like, sorted into houses, not unlike Harry Potter, but, like, a very low-income version of Harry Potter. But all that to say, like, there were so many kids that you couldn't even really get bullied that much because there was just too many. Like, if someone started to bully you, you might not see them for a month, you know? It's like...
Yeah. It's like if you're playing, like, online video games and there's somebody in the room and you're like, oh, I hate that person. You're like, I may never run into them again for a month.
Like,
so.
someone might be mean to you a couple times, but they're, like, it wasn't a sustainable school for bullying, so you could kind of get away with, like, being a loser and flying under the radar. So I feel lucky that I went to that school for that reason, because, like, small town bullying sounds terrible.
Yeah. But that's what all the 80s movies are, Footloose and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Whereas just, like, I felt like, me and my friends were getting away with it. Getting away with being losers who didn't do anything cool.
Yeah, but you said you and your friends, so that's already a start.
Right. Yeah. It's weird. I think I've, like, retained more friends from high school than college, which I don't know what that says about me.
And what was the goal in college?
The goal in college was I wanted to be. I started as a screenwriting major because I wanted to be a writer of some sort. I went to Emerson, and then I transitioned into the public radio program. They have they did at the time, they had a radio major and this big radio station you could work at. And I got very, very, very into it because I was too afraid to, like, try to perform on stage because it was such a big theater school that I felt like, like I wouldn't have been able, and I couldn't have been able to compete with the extremely loud theater kids who I didn't like anyways. So I got in with the radio kids. And, it's like I was on air and doing production stuff, and then eventually came to comedy towards the end of school, and that was what I ended up sticking with, weirdly.
Did something like have such a huge like for me, some of the huge impacts I had in comedy? One was the TV show Three's Company.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And this is I'm old. You know what I mean? Like, I'm old. Like, yeah. It's like I look like a millennial plus. You know what I mean? But, like, I'm old. But, like, the character of Jack Tripper, because I was like, this guy is like it seems like women like him, but he's still tripping and falling over things. So he's not like a standard, like, hot guy, but it seems like the kind of guy that people want to be around and is really funny. And then the show The State, when it was on MTV,
yeah, of course,
which I used to go see tapings of. I mean, old school, you know what I mean?
That's so cool.
That was like, oh, as a lot of people say, like, I want to do that. I'll never do that, but those were the things that made me kind of define when I was like, yeah, comedy is something I'm interested in. Was there anything like that for you, where it's like kind of hit you, like?
I don't have like a defining. I mean, like, I remember like the day where I was like, I want to do stand up forever, and like that was a very weird and exciting day. But in terms of just comedy, I don't know. I mean, my dad brought us up on Pee-wee's Playhouse and Monty Python. That was like, I remember we had the full VHS sets of both of those shows.
So weird out of the box stuff.
Yeah,
obviously
pretty early.
Outside of the box stuff, yeah.
And my dad sort of influenced all that. We listened to a lot of, like, one of the first concerts I ever went to was the They Might Be Giants concert.
Oh, I love They Might Be Giants.
Yeah,
and I think They Might Be I saw them once, and I was like, this was amazing. And their sound has that kind of disjointed thing of like weird comedy.
Right, like it's silly, but it's still good music and
pleasing to listen to, and it's like they'll make a weird song, and like I'm like, this is weird, like by a bunch of weird dudes, but how are they making it so pleasing, like in a general sense?
Right. I mean, and kind of like Devo in that way too.
Yeah.
And that's because it's like a huge pet peeve of mine in any kind of comedy where like the joke is that the music sucks, or I feel the same way about like when I was trying to work on that dance show. I was like, well, the joke can't be that the dancing is bad. I'm not gonna try to do anything that I know will look shitty, because it just feels like a cop out. But anyways, yeah. So and then I loved Space Ghost. That was like my favorite thing, and the Lemony Snicket books.
Okay.
Which isn't like, I mean, not comedy proper, but it's so funny. And I was like, I mean, I didn't know I had OCD till I was 23, but I look back at the way I like copied all of those Lemony Snicket books word for word. and like did notes and fell into like very primitive Google holes about a series of unfortunate events, and it's still like my favorite thing and probably influences everything I do ever.
So from all that, there was one day you're like, I would like to do stand-up comedy, please.
I think that once I started doing radio in college, and I'd done like some drama club stuff in high school, and I danced, so I knew I could like be on stage. I started to wonder, and also comedy is like a big thing at Emerson, and they kind of, encourage you to do it. So I started by doing a sketch group, and then I did some open mics at school, and then right before my senior year, I just started to really, really, really get into it. And then right after I graduated, there was like this big like shitty thing that happened, and I had a stand-up show that night, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna like write about the shitty thing that happened to me, and then go to the show and talk about it and see if I can make it funny. And I don't know if it was actually funny, but it was definitely like one of the coolest performing experiences I'd ever had of like, okay, it's like I was able to take something that really hurt and felt like shit and then make it into something that was enjoyable for other people. So that was like late 2013, early 2014. And that was when I was like, okay, I want to do this forever.
Because you did the really, you did a really, where something where people were like, the last thing I want to do is put a microphone in front of my face and voluntarily kind of have like a big old conversation about it. Like, you know what I mean? Where I'm putting it out there.
Right, yeah.
But you're taking control of that. Now, is it related to, I read because I'm a little bit of a stalker, I read you had an article published, was it in Paste maybe?
Possibly, yeah.
It was about you having pancake face. Am I?
Oh, big face. No, that was a different time.
That was that was a different weird thing because
yes,
let me tell you something.
And tribulations.
You gotta find this article because
that was an Exo Jane.
Exo Jane. Okay,
yeah.
It's Exo Jane, and it talks about you having this. You can't, and no one figured out why. Like your face.
It was hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a gross story. It's still like one of the funniest things to me in the world. Where it was right before I was moving to LA. I had like quit. It was a stress-induced something because at that time I was working 2 full-time jobs and sort of like hoping that no one would find out I was working 2 full-time jobs. And was moving here, and I was going through sort of a breakup. It was just, there was too much going on, and like the one half of my face just got huge. Like it just, I just had a really big face, and it was some sort of sinus something. That's as close as I ever got to finding out what it was. But it just grew to the size of like a softball on the left side of my face, and I had like a crazy fever, and they wouldn't let me leave the hospital until it went down, or they were gonna have to like lance it. And it was just so, because I was leaving in literally a week, and my parents came to the hospital. They're like, maybe this is a sign. Like, this is probably, maybe you shouldn't move because it seems like there's truly.
And that's a fair, I mean, people do that a lot with like, oh, maybe this is a sign, like, you know what I mean? Like,
but
you got a parking ticket.
Weird sign.
Yeah, this is like, it's either a sign that like you shouldn't, or it's the sign that like, like you get through this, like you gotta go.
Right. And they didn't end up the happy ending.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
Still
alert.
read it though, because it talks about like you're kind of like flirting with a nurse or something. Like you kind of
I had a hot nurse.
Yeah, so this is like, it's like a hot romantic kind of story where your face is gonna explode.
Really could explode at any
moment.
But it was so because I was in the hospital. They wouldn't let me leave because they didn't know what it was. And so I think on their end, to be safe, they're like, well, if we let her go and then she just dies of a big face, that's on us. So they kept me there. But all I was doing was sucking on lemons. Like that was what ended up killing it, was they would bring me lemon after lemon I think I was there for 4 days. And then they would give me sugar packets so that the lemons wouldn't taste as bad. Yeah. And then I would just suck on half a lemon for like a half hour and take a half-hour break. And then they bring in the next lemon. And eventually it brought it down, but it took days and days and days of just.
How were you when it was time? Like you're about to like ship off to LA, like where
Yeah.
where was your face at then?
My face, I was about, I want to say, like less than a week into remission of my face. And it was, I mean, it was a big risk because I was, I mean, I'm still able to be on my parents' health insurance, or, who knows for how much longer in this administration. But like at the time, Obama was still president, but their specific insurance sucked and didn't transfer out of Massachusetts. So I was like 5 days after this weird thing where I had, really used my health insurance to the fullest extent. And then I was moving to California where I knew I was not going to have health insurance.
No, there's nothing out. Like, you have to you have to kind of almost fight for everything that you want.
You can go to the ER and that's about all you can do. Which I would use later. I have a lot of fun hospital stories.
I don't doubt that you do. But it's funny because the solution seemed like some kind of 1800s remedy.
Right.
It's
like it seems
suck
like a
on
witch.
some lemons,
Yeah, just like and I was sharing a room with someone who was like recovering from something way more serious. Like it was like she was coming off of trying to get sober from heroin, I think, and she was.
Did you try telling her to suck on some lemons because it's cure all?
Like, it's working great for me. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
But that was, I mean, and that was kind of like a fun, not fun, but a nice way to spend a couple of days in Boston because I had to stop and not, be like living this weird double life I was trying to live. And then my friends came to visit me and they brought lemons and we chatted and it was nice. And they were like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know.
So you make it to LA.
Make it to LA, yeah.
And what do you do when you get here? Like,
oh, I mean, it was so I've talked about this. I don't even know if well, anyways. So I was in this horrible relationship when I was moving out here with someone who I used to perform with, and he was one of the motivating factors of like, hey, you should come out here and da-da-da.
He was already out here?
He was already out here, which he isn't anymore because that's, how that goes. But he was supposed to pick me up at the airport and just never showed up, and I never saw him again. So I got here.
It sounds like an episode of Catfish or something like we. You know what I mean? With these things where like there's just people just never show up.
If I didn't know any better, it was like he never existed, but he for sure did. But anyways, that was like my introduction here is just like someone no-showing to pick me up, and I knew like 2 or 3 other people here. I knew some people from college.
Did you have a place to live?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I lived in Inglewood when I first moved here.
Okay.
So I went to my apartment in Inglewood, and I didn't really realize what I was.
So you were kind of near the airport.
I was near. I was. Yeah. I was
so
like,
that's a plus.
Not far.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came here with that, and I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car. And then I just sort of started doing shows where I could do shows. I worked at a bookstore, and I got a job at Playboy magazine. I was there for a year.
What'd you do there? I've worked with them like on video stuff, but I mean never.
Yeah, there. I mean, I enjoyed working there. I was like absurdly underpaid. I'm pretty sure it was illegal what they were doing, but I worked in their research department for their magazine. So like the most unsexy job you could have. But it was cool because I got to do like a bunch of, they're kind of, print is dead. Mm-hmm. So they need a lot of people to do a lot of different things. So I learned a lot, and I got to do illustration work for them and some animation, and it ended up like being a good experience. And they also have an open bar at their office all day. So that was cool.
You know what? I think I remember that room that they have the bar in.
It's like, so nice. And it's like, but isn't this a failing business? Like, but also never take it away. I think that's one of those things where it's like they'll always probably spend money to have the appearance of like, we're doing great.
Yeah, we're Playboy.
We're doing great. Yeah. Free Blue Moon for everybody.
Yeah.
We're doing great. Which was, I mean, I took advantage of that for the whole year I was there.
Good.
Yeah.
As you should.
Right.
That's a benefit.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then just tried to figure out the stand-up scene here. I did characters. I did sketch for a little bit. I took some UCB classes. I, just
made the rounds.
Threw shit at the wall, see what stuck. Yeah.
How did you get
And
involved with anime? Like must have glossed over this, but how did you get
oh,
involved in like how to animate? Because it's like how do there's a point where you don't know how to do it, and then there's a point where you eventually do. So like, how does that happen?
yeah. Well, I'm not like formally trained or anything, but I'd done it a little bit in Boston. I started by just like making flyers for stuff because I worked when I was working two full-time jobs in Boston. I was at the Boston Globe doing reportery stuff because I wanted to make my dad proud. And then I was also working full-time helping to manage an improv theater. And I was teaching sketch there, and I was on improv teams and doing the whole bit. They were great. It's this theater called Improv Boston, and they sort of let me experiment with whatever. So I started experimenting with like visuals during sketch shows and then showing short like animatics and was trying to figure it out. But then when I moved here and I realized pretty quickly that I didn't have a sketch partner anymore, that was when I really like leaned into learning how can I animate efficiently and have it look good and or the way I want it to at least. Um, and so I sort of like learned how to animate as a response to not having a person to perform with, and then was like, well, I can do two voices and then animate them. And
So
so
you became your
that's
own partner,
exactly,
or
yeah.
the animation becomes the other partner.
My cartoons are my friends now.
And you've animated for I was looking at some Comedy Central stuff.
Yeah. I've done stuff for Comedy Central and Funny or Die. I've done Jash stuff. Like it's worked out
Yeah.
pretty well. I did a series for this place called Cafe. That's like my favorite thing. Called Boston PD Zamboni Crimes Division, which is just about Boston and Zambonis and my dad bringing
So
me
some
to hockey
hockey,
games.
yeah. It's got some like hockey flavor in
It's
there.
all there, yeah. So and that's pretty much what I do for a living now, which is great.
So so the animation is that your like main job wise thing now is like freelance animation? Would you say like when
Yeah.
everyone out there's got to introduce well what do you do, man? What do you do?
God, I know.
Okay.
I fare very poorly with that question.
Yeah.
I guess now it's pretty much
Yeah.
all freelance writing and animation, and then when I tour for stand up a couple times a year, I mean that does not pay for much. It mostly pays for the cost of touring. But
So I've talked about this in previous podcasts and to a lot of people. So like
sure,
just I mean, can you talk about me for a second here?
yeah, of course.
And I'm kind of like leaning on other people's information. So I've done like say improv for like a while, 10 years plus, whatever, sketch comedy,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of YouTube, but I've never done stand up.
Oh, okay.
And I've written jokes, and I've done storytelling, like I've done like the Armando show, or it was the
Right.
Armando or something like that. But I've never done a thing where I was like, I'm prepared with like 5 minutes of things, and maybe it has a little bit of like a beginning, middle, and end in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm terrified. I'm not terrified to get in front of people.
Right.
I've done stuff at like the Palladium, like in front of like thousands of people, and I'm just not nervous about that. But I think
Mhm.
the fact is I've never made anything about myself. Not saying this. Oh, you make it about yourself, but I've never. It was just on me. It was
Sure.
a sketch or improv. I'm just surrounding myself with like cool and interesting people. To get involved in the stand up world, and it seems like a lot of people do stand up because it's just a very kind of like, well, I'm gonna go to an open mic. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, like, what is a like a good way to go about it for those out there
Mhm.
are considering it, because you're like doing it and you're touring, and to me you seem very fearless.
I
And
try.
and you try. Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's like you can't go up there and be like, "Hi, I'm terrified of everything. Let's talk." You have
Right.
to either you're fearless, or and then sometimes putting on the thing of like you're fearless is being fearless, depending on who you are.
Sure. Yeah.
So when like in general, or like getting started, like going to those open mics, which sound like a nightmare,
Yeah, for sure they are.
but they're an equal nightmare for everybody.
Yeah.
But that's the process, right? Going and doing open mics and testing stuff out.
I well, yes. Like you still have to, of course, go to mics and develop material. I do think that it's like changing a little bit. Like I don't think that I would be able to do what I am doing right now if I started
tomorrow.
10 or 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Right. Well, because so much of what I have done, like, started as, I don't know, because I'm like, it took me a while to want to be on stage as myself. And I gravitate towards comedians who, I mean, like Maria Bamford is like my
Yeah.
God. She's the best, and so much of her stand up is about fear and like how she handles it, and it's fearless what she's doing, but she's talking about fear, and like that to me is so cool. But I mean, a lot of what do, or a lot of what turns into stand up for me, starts as like a piece I've written, or something that maybe started as a more internet based thing that I adapt for the stage, where I don't know, like, not most of the, not most, but like part of the stuff I do doesn't always take shape at open mics. It starts as maybe something else, and then I pull out what I think will work as stand up and try to adapt it a little bit. So I appreciate sort of the opportunity to like be able to develop stuff in different ways, and not feeling super beholden to like, I have to go to an open mic and do,
You test this for 1 month and then do a booked show or something like that.
Right, where it's like I still do that, but there's other options, and stand up became a way more enjoyable. I mean, it's a great thing for control freaks to do, and I like animation and stand up for me are two things that it's like, I'm a control freak, and those are two things that I can really control, and like the way it happens, and the outcome is totally on me. And whereas like, I think when I was doing improv, especially, first of all, I was very bad, and second of all, like, just the idea that, I don't know, like, I could be doing something, and it if it fails, it was everyone's fault.
It doesn't matter how good someone is if it doesn't go well, or you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
everyone either wins or everyone loses, I guess. For
Yeah.
lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I like it in theory, but I don't know, like, it was confusing and frustrating for me a lot when I was doing more improv than I do now, which is nothing. So I don't know. I mean, I think that there's like becoming, I'm not saying this very gracefully, but just outside of open mics, I think there's other ways to develop material for stand-ups that there didn't used to be, and I think that that's great.
Yeah, I mean when I did that animation, that was it started with a tweet, and I was like, this would be cool animated, and I was like, I've never really told it as a joke, but I mean, in theory, that could be a joke in somebody's stand-up thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and Twitter's just like a beta test for all stand-ups of like, oh well, does this mean anything to anyone? And then maybe you try it at an open mic later that day or whatever.
Yeah. When you tour, though, like when do you go from like, I'm just doing this locally or to wherever I can do it, wherever I'm visiting, to like, I'm actively going to do this in different cities?
Well, part of that is for me was sort of meeting comedians that it made sense for me to open for, because
Okay.
I still open a lot.
Yeah.
And so once I had opened for like a few people in Boston, because it's such a college heavy town, that like once you sort of get into the Boston stand-up scene, getting college gigs is like, there's a lot of them, which is great. So I'd had that experience a couple of times, and so was sort of when I moved out here, there were a few comedians who were like, oh, you would make sense as an opener for me. And that was how I got to see a few different cities. And then, if provided that I did well as an opener, some cities started to bring me back as a headliner, and it sort of just happened organically that way.
So you gotta get to these places, though.
Right.
Right. And how does that? Are you driving across the country? Or you're just taking? How does that work? I'm ignorant. Well, I mean, I guess it happens anyway. It happens. You know what I mean?
It depends. Yeah. Like there was a time where last year I opened for Maria Bamford at a few dates on the East Coast, and I mean, like, we both flew across the country.
Right.
So I mean, that just because that made the most sense. But there's been other times where, like, I did a stint last year of opening in the Midwest, and we flew to Chicago and then drove around the Midwest for a couple of days. That's what I'm about to do the week after this. Is like we're gonna fly out to Chicago and then I'm headlining a few dates, and my opener and I will be driving around, and then I'm switching, and I become the opener for a different group, and then I'm driving around with them.
Okay.
So
Are
it
you
all
ever worried
depends.
about like, not say worried, but how, I feel like if you're performing in LA, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to perform what you're going to perform, but I think you somewhat know what you're getting yourself into. But
Sure, yeah.
maybe, in, I don't know, Duluth, maybe, do you ever change your material, or is it just like you're getting my
Um,
whatever amount you're doing, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or
no, I mean, I think I don't know. I'm not the type of stand up that's like, if you hate it, I don't care. Like
yeah.
I do care, and I want people to
You
enjoy
want people to have a
what.
good time.
Yeah, I mean, especially like the more like remote, for lack of a better word, the more remote places you go, people go out of their way to see you, and it's like I don't want to yell at you or
Shit on them, you know what I mean? Forever just
right.
spending their money and want to have a good time.
Yeah, that seems a little bit dice for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't travel so I can yell at strangers, and I hope strangers don't come out to be yelled at. So, for certain areas, maybe I will remove a joke that I don't think will work as well. But for the most part, I mean, I think I've lucked out in finding bookers who, like, my act is like weird, and people don't ask me to go somewhere if that's not what they want.
I mean, would you be in like, is there like an alternative comedy kind of vibe anywhere, or is that not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I've been, and I'm still like learning. I'm going to a lot of cities for the first time in the next couple of months, but like a city that I never would have expected would have like a thriving alt scene is Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I'm going next week for the third time in like a year. Like they're awesome, and there is a crowd of like you know, Dem voting
Yeah.
alt comedy fans in Fort Wayne, and
That
and
don't
they
mind getting a
feel
little weird.
they don't. Yeah, they're doing a whole festival out there, and it's like I'm super excited. The first time I went to Fort Wayne, I was fucking terrified because I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna hate it. They're gonna da da da. And the first time I went to like Lansing, Michigan, but when I did I headlined in Lansing last winter, and it was like a punk club full of queer teenagers, and I was just like, oh my god,
Yeah.
like you guys are here, what are you guys doing here? But
Yeah.
like don't go. But what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I don't know, there are, for the most part, I think I've lucked out in that people usually seem to know what they're getting into when I'm headlining a show. I mean, there's always, if it's more of a showcase and people are at a club, there are times where it's like, oh, I want to quit forever.
And in just my trying to understand, I'm just trying to understand this word, and I'm using this podcast sometimes, and I'm using people like you to give me free information.
These people, yeah.
Which I do, and I've done it from previous episodes, and I'll continue to do it. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like this is my world.
This is your world, baby.
No, this is all of our worlds. And this is for everybody. How do you? Is there like when it? Like sometimes I'll look at things and it'll be like from MTV, and then like Last Comic Standing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Greg Summers. I don't know if that's a real person. Do you have to have any cachet? Like,
Yeah.
the girl from Big Face. You know what I mean? Like I started, like I say that, but is there any kind of? Do you need to have that cachet, or it's just like you with the picture of you with the microphone?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on the place. Usually, I mean, yeah, I guess that you do need like a few things to be like, hey, this. But it's so funny. Like when I moved here, I didn't fully understand how small a thing you can leverage into sounding way fucking cool. Like I didn't.
I was on Tosh.0 once. They like featured one of my videos like in a positive way.
Right, and then you're like, as seen on Tosh.0.
But that's the thing is,
Forever.
I wouldn't be doing the wrong thing by doing that.
No, people do it all the time.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing. It's like, yeah, I had a piece in the New Yorker one time, and now it's like one of the main credits people will pull out when they're promoting. They're like, she's written for the New Yorker. I'm like, well, it's technically true, but
But
it
I'm
feels
impressed
silly.
as you're telling me. Like I'm impressed. So I feel
I
like
mean,
if
Tosh Point sounds cool too. So it's like
but we all know that, like, well, it's just one isolated thing once that may have nothing to do with what I'm about to kind of give you right now.
right. I'm like, I hope that you're not expecting like
Some highbrow.
Right. I'm like, I'm going to eat dog food, but the New Yorker credit is technically accurate.
Yeah. Wait, so you eat dog food on stage?
Yeah, I've done that for years. And started.
I mean, I want to sit here and just like be shocked, but I'm like, sounds right.
That was something I started doing in college when I was in a sketch group, and then didn't adapt it for stand up until like last year. But I don't know, like I've just been trying to find more ways to bring together stuff I've done and turn it into a cohesive act, which is like a work in progress. But the dog food thing was actually a pretty big step.
I like how you like. I wasn't gonna rush in to eating dog food. I had to really, you know what I mean? It only came in like the last year. It's
Well,
like I'm working in there. It's
well,
a
now
delicate
it's-
process.
It kind of, I mean,
No, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure that it's not just you just trying to like, hey, listen, I really don't have any, like, I don't really have any depth, so I'm just gonna eat some dog food to be like a weirdo. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's what's always my fear, and what's kind of is I wanted to make sure I'd written the right joke so that it wasn't. I mean, and if you're eating dog food, it's always going to be sort of shoehorned in. It's not going to be like, oh, it's the only possible end game.
Yeah.
But I wanted to find just a context for
Make it,
it.
yeah, make it as
And not
smart,
just
like
like,
the best elevated reason to eat dog food
Right.
for you.
Not like early odds, like random human, because
Yeah.
that's like, okay, we're past that as a world. So I mean, I only ate dog food in the context of a very specific sketch for a long time, and then stopped working on that sketch group, and then figured out how to bring it into stand up. And even now, like, I don't want to do it every time, because then you just become dog food girl, and I don't want.
Do you eat a lot of it?
I don't really now. I eat. I mean, I eat enough of it so that the joke works, and sometimes it's.
Is it at least organic with no GMOs or like?
Oh no, it's Alpo. It's
so it's just straight up
Alpo
chemicals,
gravy
like
cravers.
Okay.
So it's mostly. Liz, I would advocate for Alpo gravy cravers if should the apocalypse arrive. Gravy cravers, it's basically stew. Like you're.
Well,
everyone will be fine.
humans test dog food for like that's
Yeah.
a job to like.
It's edible.
Dogs aren't testing and going. You know what? I like this gravy train. I don't like this other one. It's humans testing. Like I think
I should freelance as that, because I have tried them all.
Yeah.
And Alpo gravy cravers for me is number one. But yeah, I mean, I forget where I was going with that. Yeah, wait, what were we talking about?
I just the topic was like eating. The topic was just eat. I think it was just talking about like what people might when you're going out, what people might expect.
Oh,
and,
right. Yeah. So I mean, it's like the way that credits work. I mean, that was confusing to me when I first moved here, where it was like, one of my favorite things about living here, and what was like cool when I first moved here, was like starting to do stand up here, was like how many backyard shows there are here, and because it's nice out all the time and people have yards.
So you can just turn it. Anything could be like turn it to DIY like.
Right, and that's there aren't yards or good weather in Boston, so it was like a new concept to me. And I remember like one of the first backyard shows I ever did shortly after I moved here, there were 2 people with Conan credits on it, and I was just like, why are they doing stand up in a backyard? And until now I realize, I'm like, oh, that is just what it is. You're never done. You can have all the credits in the fucking world and still do a backyard show, and that's a good thing. And but I mean, just speaking to the way that credits are weird and make you sound too
elevated,
cool to,
yeah,
make you sound too cool to do a backyard show, when it's like, no, we're all gonna do backyard shows until we die or quit.
I mean, I would like to be
ending.
cool enough to do a backyard show. Like for me, like
Backyard shows rule.
Yeah,
They're
I'm looking
so much
to
fun.
be like backyard worthy, but I'm still at a point where I'm like trying to figure out how to, you know what I mean, like the steps I need to. Either I know what the steps I need to take, and I know enough people in the. I mean, I've been here for a long enough time where I know tons of people that do it, but it's just something about it. But what would be
But
like?
do you have a backyard? Because if so, you can just start a show.
I have a mansion.
Oh, okay. Well, that gets
Yeah,
complicated.
I mean, kind of all my servants are there, and like
You
the
don't want to make it
gardeners.
all. I mean, but free entertainment for them.
Yeah, I don't want to give them anything. Like I'm just very selfish. I want them to just constantly be in the state of suffering.
The first show that I ran here was a backyard show
Mm.
in Echo Park, and it was fun. I mean,
That's
it
right.
was
That's what
so
side I live
much
on.
fun. Oh,
I'm
really?
in Atwater.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I used to run.
I wish you still did. I would have it in right now.
You would.
Well, I hope I would have.
We moved it. We do it at the Pack now.
Oh, okay. That's a good.
Which is the best. Oh,
yeah.
it's like one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Maybe my favorite theater in town. It's great.
Yeah.
Anyways, backyard shows rule.
Were you just at Comic-Con?
I was there yesterday. Yeah.
You were there yesterday. Okay, I saw that and I got a little nervous. I was like, you're supposed to be here today, and I got nervous that but I was like, I don't know. I was like, no, she knows. She's always on tour. I feel like you're constantly always moving around on tour.
I like to be in different places at different times. I like buses a lot, which is something.
Did you take a bus to San Diego?
Yeah, there and back yesterday. I get that Greyhounds are dangerous objectively, but I feel nothing by being on one. I like really enjoy it. And I mean, for some of my solo dates in 2 weeks, I'm like, I want to take the bus. I like bus naps. I like bus thoughts.
Yeah.
I like making cartoons on the bus. Usually,
well, you can kind of have your mind be free of like driving and. Like,
it's great. Yeah, I love it, and it's super cheap. But anyways, yeah, I was at Comic-Con yesterday.
And you were promoting a book?
I was, yeah.
Tell
sold
about that.
in this very establishment. It's a zine I published through Devastator Press, which is this amazing small comedy press in LA, called Poisonous People, Paper Dolls. And it's just a series of mostly real people that I've met, very specific, like whatever, intern who's gaslighting you or stuff like that, that was released, I think, in May. And this is the second year I've been at Comic-Con with them, and I did a panel with them last year, did one with them yesterday. It's so much fun.
And the kind of you're just trying to bring attention. I mean, probably to a bunch of things, but you're trying to bring attention to your zine.
Yeah, but I mean, it's even like, I know that my zine, it's like not the sort of thing that's going to move heavily at Comic-Con because.
But it brings awareness.
Right, and I'm there, and I can be like, "Hey, look at this thing." But I mean, I go because I enjoy it. I'm writing about it for Paste, so it's sort of like a double up that way. I got to see shows. I saw. What did I see? I went to a bunch of, and I get to meet artists that I know from the internet or whatever, and sort of just get to put names to faces, and it's fun. It's a good way to spend a day.
Yeah, well, it's very. When I saw that, I was like, oh, you're at Comic-Con, like promoting like a zine or like a book or whatever it is. My perception of it, I feel like that's like you know what I mean. Like I was like, oh, that to me, when I see that as an outsider, I'm like, oh, that's such a huge deal. Like, and it is a huge deal. But for me, like when I see those kind of things, it's like that's like, I don't know. Just I feel like that's just something that like not everyone can do. You know what I mean? Everyone gets to do because it physically can't fit all the people in there.
They fit a fuck ton of people in there.
I noticed. I feel like I was like, noticed I was like,
it's too many.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It's nice. And I always only go for one day.
So you just give it all you got for like one day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I spent most of the day with my friend and fellow comic, Georgia Brooks, yesterday. She was there as well. And it was just like, it's fun. And then by the end of the day, you want to get the hell out of there.
I imagine.
The panel I was on, I mean, it was a long day. The panel I was on was at 9:00 last night. And
it's still bumping. Everything's still bumping then?
It was so busy. I was so surprised. But I mean, that's what they're there for, I guess. But it was like a comedy, just really goofy, laid back panel. And then I caught the 10:30 bus back to LA and got here at like 1:30 in the morning and went to bed.
And then he just rolled in here and like
like
a pro, like a freaking pro.
Hell yeah.
So so next is your touring.
I'm touring starting a week from today, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to Albuquerque for the first time next Sunday.
Just sweat it out in Albuquerque.
Yeah, I'm gonna Breaking Bad it out.
Yeah.
That happens there, right? I haven't.
You walk around, you break bad, you
break
meth it up.
bad, you
Yeah.
go walk
The
into
city has nothing else. There's no other culture. It's not known for anything.
Well, I'm excited because it seems like they have like a pretty cool, thriving alt scene there. So I'm doing headlining a show at a brewery. I'm bringing my friend Gary. We're gonna make a day of it, and then flying out from LA next Tuesday to go to Chicago and start the Midwest stuff.
So what's the ultimate? What's like the goal? I mean, I know there's a lot of things. It seems like a lot of things, but is there any like close goals?
Close goals. Ooh, good question.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I want to start being able to commit weird stuff to film, whether that means like more filmed sketches or just, I don't know. Like I like doing a lot of different things, but sometimes it gets to the point where it's like it feels too fractured. And I want to sort of bring in all the weird stuff and the animation and performance stuff into like a cohesive. So
it's not like like I do this and I do a little of that and I do a little of this and then people don't know what to do with you. That's what I've heard. I've actually heard that told to me because I was writing and producing and doing that and doing all this stuff, and people were like, "Can we narrow some things down so it's easier to kind of?"
Right. I mean, when I first met my manager out here, that was the refrain before I even moved here. She was like, "All right, like I want you to move here. We'll figure something out, but like I don't know what to do with you. You got to figure, and." Which, especially when I was like 22, I was like, I don't know what to do with me. Help. Like, what?
Yeah.
But over time, it's like, I'm still very much figuring it out. It's hard to bring all that different stuff together in a way that makes sense and just doesn't feel like.
So you have too many interests.
Right. It's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem, but it's also hard to
It's a problem.
You have to be willing to be like, you know what? I love you all, but I need to give this the most amount of focused attention.
Right. Or just ideally, I'd like to develop some sort of idea that, everything has its little piece and works as a cohesive thing. So that would be the ultimate goal, whether that's like a short film or whatever it ends up being.
Well, I don't see how, with all the stuff you're doing, I don't see how you could avoid getting that. And I'm not saying that just to be like whatever. It just sounds like I just don't see how you could avoid whether somebody offers you something you don't want to do it. That's up to you. But I can't imagine that the opportunities won't come. I mean,
I hope so.
This podcast is just broadcast to dozens,
a boon,
trillions, and tens of people.
Looking forward to the bump.
Yeah, it's
Can't wait.
Huge. You can get that huge Midwest bump.
Hell yeah, dude! I'm so stoked. That's the next 2 weeks, dude. The Midwest bump.
That's all I can offer is that Midwest bump. So where can we find you online? Where do you want people to go?
On Twitter at Hamburger Phone.
Of course.
Yeah. I saw Juno. I have a website, JamieLoftusIsInnocent.com. And then I have a podcast, too, that I didn't even talk about, and I should have. It's called the Bechdel Cast.
Yeah. I've seen you post about that.
Yeah. And that's a weekly podcast I do with my friend Caitlin Durante, where we talk about the role of women in movies with comedians, and we record it upstairs at Meltdown.
Oh, okay. So you're right at home here. We're just feeling the vibes. We'll check that out. And if you want to see this video I was talking about that you animated for me, my first attempt at that's at youtube.com/Jason Horton. You can check me out at Twitter, Jason_Horton, and subscribe to this podcast. Leave it a rating or comment, and for the same.
But do it.
Yeah, and same for the Bechdel test. Did I say that right?
Bechdel Cast.
Bechdel Cast.
But we use the test.
Yes. Okay. The Bechdel test. See, I knew that.
Yeah.
The Bechdel Cast. So check that out. So this is fun. Party.